What's going on, everybody? I was muted the whole time. Yes, we are back to streaming. What is happening? Thank you so much. Let me do that again. What's going on, everybody? My name is Ian Robinson, and I am the lead ZBrush trainer and training manager here at Maxon, where I try to make learning ZBrush as fun as possible. So there you go. That was my intro. Yeah, so we're already doing great. We're off to an amazing start. So yeah, no, it's just I haven't streamed for a minute, and so here we are. Anyway, so yeah, exactly. The mute button was right here too. I've been working on this project that's just kind of been for fun, just a little fun passion project. And so here I actually wanted to maybe go over some asset creations for some of the other turtles that might be coming. Yes. So what's going on, Andres? How you doing? The Painted Dragon. Osama, hello. Fractal Owl, how you doing? How you doing? All right. Cool. So stuff and things and stuff. Let me see. Let me get my mouse set up here, or my fun tablet set up. Tablet's yelling at me right now. Let's see. What is happening? Where's my mouse? It's over there. 1 second. How is everyone doing? Oh, no, I didn't mean to click that one. No. How's everyone doing? How's life going? Any ZBrush projects yourself? Cool. My tablet's not recognized. So, dude, we are off to an amazing start. Hold on 1 second, guys. I do apologize. All right, let's see if that works. Let's see what happens. You're doing good, Chris? That's awesome. What's up, Jaime? Ian, I got my email for the XMD bundle. You went on the summit. You cannot wait to learn more. That's fantastic, man. That's super fantastic. Whoop, whoop. So you know this thing where you're like, everything is all set up. You're good to go. You were just doing your stuff yesterday, and now all of a sudden you can't do anything? This is where we are at. I do apologize. We might just have to do this with a mouse and challenge ourselves. I was planning on making some assets anyway. Okay, you know what? Yep. Let's go ahead and give this a... Oh, there it goes. Okay, great. Let's see. Yes, my tablet's back. Okay, great. Not sure what happens. You guys are watching. This is live. How do you know this is live? Because I got nothing prepared. Oh, thanks, man. Thank you so much, Visual. That's so awesome. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So my plan is to make a few assets for some of the other characters, because Leonardo's all by himself. So we're going to attempt to go through and see how many of these we can make today. I personally think I want to start with the nunchucks, and then I want to move over to the size. The staff or bow is pretty simple, so that should be kind of fun. So we'll go through and see which ones we'll create. Hey, Chris, how you doing, man? Welcome into the stream. You get to watch me fumble. All right, so let's do this. So this is our main one. So we're going to do a stamp right now because I want people to see what I'm working on. And also, too, I'm going to go up to my draw size and do my 85 millimeter focal length. It's a focal length that I really like overall when it comes to full characters. I just feel like it's a little bit more natural. So when I work in perspective, this is actually the focal length I work in. I just think it's a lot easier to deal with. And so, and we're just move that off to the side, and let's just go ahead and switch. And let's grab, we're going to do the nunchucks first. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab a cylinder. I'm going to drag this out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to showcase the power of initialize. So if you guys don't know what initialize can do, so there is a big step, and I get this question a lot, where you're moving into, you drag out an asset, you hit edit, and then you make Polymesh 3. And a lot of times the question is, why do I have to draw out the object, hit edit, and then make Polymesh 3D? And that's because there's a lot of information between edit and make Polymesh 3D that actually makes ZBrush really powerful. And one of those things is being able to initialize and actually control the shapes in which you want. So for example, if I go to initialize here, I can adjust the actual x-axis, the y-axis, the Z-axis, so I have control there. I can make this into having some sort of internal radius. I can actually control the resolution and maybe pick something a little bit more easier to deal with, like let's say 16. I can also change the V divide as well if I don't want, or if I do want subdivisions happening that way, or I can drop it so that there's no supporting edge loops in that area. I can also taper the top, and I can also cause like a cap. So this is really powerful, especially when you're trying to come through and actually design stuff. So case in point here, I would like something like a 16 on the H divide, and then now I can hit make polymesh 3D, and now the shape has been modified to my liking, which allows me to also have like really just nice, good, clean symmetry on both X and Y. So, I'm sorry, on X as well. So now I can come through and maybe just kind of clean this up a little bit, or I can just start modifying as I like. So initialize just really lets you come through and customize your shape as much as possible. So we're also going to save this one, and we're going to call this a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. We'll call this the Mikey asset. Boom, done. Not the Nifty 50, not the Nifty 50. Now, not the Nifty 50, only because, so it's a great question, actually, that you didn't know was going to happen. What's up, Leonard? The Nifty 50. So the Nifty 50 is really cool. However, when you get close up to any type of, when you get really close to a person, you start seeing a warp that occurs. And it's that focal shift warp that happens in the lens. And people start feeling elongated the closer the lens actually gets to the person with the lower focal length. So, for example, in fact, I can showcase this really simple just on this thing right here as a premise. If I were to turn this to draw and then, so obviously perspective turned off, it looks like this, perspective turned on. But if I were to start coming down to like, as I bust this, let's see, okay, perspective turned on. Okay, so if we come here, let's actually dock this on this side just so we can. So as I start stepping down into the focal length, you could see now that because it's super close to me, there's a lot more warpage and perspective distortion that occurs. As I start stepping back away, it starts becoming a little bit more orthographical. And at 85 millimeter, you get a pretty close to orthographic feel without it being super warped. If I were to do, when I used to do headshot photography, I used to shoot anywhere between 85 to 120 millimeter. And this was just something that, again, to the human eye, this looks really good, and it's not too far off. Of course, if you're ever referencing anything that's like, if you're trying to follow true likeness, then you want to find the focal length of the image that you're referencing. But as far as like sculpting characters, and if I go into perspective mode, I usually don't, just because orthographic is fine for toys. It actually is a good sense of how it's going to be 3D printed or manufactured. But in this case, I've been working more in perspective lately, and so 85 is just something that I really like to. When I do hard surface, I completely cut off orthographic. So, in fact, in this case, we're gonna cut out perspective and work in orthographic because I'm working on a weapon, and I find that to be easier. So that's my overall logic. But the Nifty 50 is a great lens. If you only needed one lens and you're a photographer, there you go. The Nifty 50, I 100,000% support that. Okay, cool. So I ranted for you for all that good stuff. Hello, can you explain what an N-gon is? I'm struggling to understand you. Yes. In fact, give me 1 second. Because I want to get you something too. I want to get you, there is this really cool, thing that I really liked. Let's see if I can find it real fast. It was like a great, like, all the different polys explained. So let me see if I can find that real quick. It was like a simple image. If I don't have it, then I'll just give it to you. But because it's in simple sort, an N-gon is just we call it nasty topology. But I want to get you a proper definition. So hold on 1 second. Yeah. Okay, so I can't find the image, which sucks. That's okay. If I find it, I'll shout it out on my Instagram. But basically, an n-gon is just simply this. Anything that has 5 or more sides connected to it, that's an n-gon. So here, this is all comes to a point. This is an n-gon. This is why I call it, it's like nasty topology. It works for a lot of things. Like if this topology was hidden, it's totally fine that, you know, it looks like this. But if this was visible and I wanted to be judged by my wireframe and make things a little bit easier and a little bit more clean, then this n-gon this would not be super clean. And the reason for that is, watch what happens when I subdivide this. You see how it starts faceting and it starts creating this really nasty topology that happens. That's because everything is driving from this single point that's up here at the top. So this is actually not super clean. We can actually, though, use a technique in ZBrush to fix this really quickly that I actually don't see a lot of people utilizing it. And so let's go ahead and showcase a quick tip, which is called Mesh Fusion. And Mesh Fusion is super important. And if you watch the ZBrush Summit, I was happy to see an artist actually showcase this. Henry Cervanka, shout out to you, buddy, because this was actually really cool. And I'm happy to see that there are some people who still use it. So I'm assuming this is a feature that kind of got buried. And so let's chat about it. So for example, like I said, I don't want this n-gon, but I definitely want to clean this topology up. So we're going to go to Group by Normals, which if you don't know is going to go ahead and just give me different polygroups. And let's say I have a brush. In fact, it's actually Henry's brush that he was so graciously offered up. So I'm going to go ahead and find that real fast. Let's see, is it under my downloads? Where is it? If not, I'll just make one real quick to kind of showcase the power of it. Do I not have it? I don't have it. That's fine. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to duplicate this just to showcase it. If you have a brush that has, or have a geometry that actually is really nice. So if I were to come up to here to crease and just crease my polygroups and subdivide this a few times, and we're going to hit solo mode for this. And now I'm going to delete lower. You see that this is also what we don't want, right? So if I go to Z-Remesher and I actually do a quick Z-Remesh at, let's go 2. We'll keep my creases. And let's just do a quick Z-Remesher. Okay, that's kind of funky topology, right? So let's actually do one better. Let's back up. And with symmetry turned on, I'll give you a little tip. This is how I do some stuff. I'm going to turn on the actual X and, we're going to turn on the... I'm going to turn on the X and Z. I'm hitting the wrong buttons today. X and Z. So we have something like this. So now if I Z-Remesh this again at same, I get much cleaner topology, right? And what you can really do here is you can actually come through and save this bit out as its own separate topology. So now if I go delete hidden, send this back home, and I save this as a brush. If you don't know how to create a custom brush, you can just go here and go to... not save as. Go to your B for brush and go, it's all the way down at the bottom, and then go to create insert multi-mesh and say new, and now I have this, and I can drag this out a million times, right? So now, if we come up to this shape here, and notice I have these different polygroups, if I come on up to geometry and make sure smooth is turned off, here's the cool part. I can come on in here, and I can drag this topology out. Okay, and I can make sure it fits exactly how I want. Hold control and drag, hold control, drag again, and that's gonna re-clean up that shape. And then if I Z-Remesh this, I can get a lot cleaner topology. I can keep my creases, keep my edges, make sure things are cleaned up. And I can come through here and I can replace that topology. Oh, that's nice, I had smooth turned on. Let's turn that off. So I can make clean edges really, really quickly, really fast, which is nice. So, and of course, this actually works better if you already have some protected edge loops. So I come through here and say insert, and I want to add in this edge loop and maybe this one to protect it. And then I come back and I pick my draw size again and I drag this out and I say, yep, that's the shape that I want. It can help replace some of this and then clean some stuff up for you. So these are really good ways to kind of go through. Although I showed you how to Z-Remesh to go in and actually make that nice. But again, it's all about just having your topology as clean as possible. And so I can make this so that it feels pretty nice. And like I said, this is an older technique that you can utilize to clean up any of those n-gons that you don't want. You just need to have those polygroups on. And then again, you can come through and then modify your Z-Remesher, Keep your groups, turn that down to 0. Let's actually call this a target of 1. And you can see now you can start cleaning up those Engons really quickly. So there are some approaches to that that are really useful. And that was my rant. No, John, thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. And when I find that image, this was this cool image I found that it had everything. It was like a cheat sheet, and it was so cool. And I always found it really useful for beginners. So if I do see that, I'm gonna Instagram story that. I think it was really cool. You are absolutely welcome. Absolutely. What's up, Yarv? Yes. Creased by Paul Gabries. You absolutely know it. He's tainted with that for sure. I'm gonna back this up a little bit here, and I'm actually going to, because I don't really need to mesh fuse. This isn't a good technique for doing this specific one right now, right? But what I am gonna do is, like I showed you guys, I'm actually going to just do some quick subdivisions by Creased by my good buddy Paul Gabry. Just get a couple in there real fast, quick, and in a hurry. And then my go-to zero mesher to start with is usually about between 2 to 5, or at least 10% of what's going on, because this is in thousands, and this is only 600 active points. Keep creases, keep groups down to 0, adaptive size down to 0. I get really nice, clean topology. Do this in half, and look at this. You can get really nice, clean topology very, very quickly, especially with simple shapes like this. So that's a great way to do it. And then, of course, too, just come back up if you just don't want to work on the X mode, and then now I have symmetry here. So really fun, fast, quick, and in a hurry. And then another tip real quick, since I'm spitting them out, is if you ever need to simplify the amount of edge loops that you have on your shape because you're working super low resolution and you don't want to kick up so fast, then what you can actually do is go to edge loop and delete loops. And what delete loops do, or what it does rather, is that it takes all of the non-supporting shapes, or the edge loops that don't actually support the shape itself, and it will delete the unnecessary edge loops. So only the edge loops that make up the shape is what is kept. This simplifies things down from, let's say, something as like almost 1,000 active points. If I delete that, now you're about 130. So it really just reduces the amount of topology you're working with, allowing you to clean up things a lot quicker. And then you can always put that stuff back yourself with ZModeler. Speaking of ZModeler, let's go ahead and do some thoughts and things. So I'm going to quickly come in. We're going to make some nunchucks first. So I'm just going to go ahead and isolate a cap, or make this a bit of a cap. Say something like that. There we go. Perfect. And then I'm going to hover over this face Q mesh. So I'm going to do my action first. Then I'm going to do what I'm targeting. And I'm going to go ahead and drag this out. But I want this to be a separate piece. I don't want this to be attached. So I'm going to press and hold Control. And this is going to pull this out for me. So then I can have something like this. I could also, too, come through here. And let's say I want to actually fill this spot here with the same thing. Like, let's say I want this cap to be here. So I can actually quickly color this the exact same poly group. Instead of having to do, I mean, this is a quick method, right? You just clicking those 2 active points and then saying these 2 active points right here. I could do that really, really quickly. But real fast, if I wanted to get very specific, and let's say I only wanted the edge of this to be the exact same poly group as this, I can go ahead and press and hold Alt, click this, let go, and start painting the outside. And that is actually going to give me that temporary selection. So again, press and hold Alt, gives me a temp, let go of Alt or Option, and then drag my mouse cursor over the areas that I want this to be. Because this nunchuck isn't necessarily, maybe it's drilled into the wood and the way the cap is actually one that got folded over. So then now I can drag this out with that control and I can have more of a custom shape. And then we'll just select these 2 items. We'll come through here, geometry, subtools, split hidden, bada bing, bada boom. Now we have these 2 shapes right here, which is good for us. I was wondering when you're drawing out the IMM, why does the original subtool disappear? I honestly don't have a good answer for that. I'm not sure. If I'm here on solo, okay, I'm on solo. I actually think I just figured it out. I'm here. So here's the thing. When solo is turned off, then it doesn't disappear, right? It just masks off the other area. So I lied to you. I have a great answer for you. When solo's turned on, you're actually looking at just one subtool. So when you start dragging this out, it actually just completely makes the other aspect disappear. It's soloing only one subtool at a time. Now, I don't know if this was intentional or not, which is why I was like, I don't know if I have a good answer for you. I don't know if that was intentional. I can always ask if that was intentional. That's just something that I've always noticed. But when solo's turned off, it doesn't. When solo's turned on, it absolutely does. And I think that's just because it's respecting what you're asking ZBrush to do, which is keeping it solo. But it's a great question, and that's how I break it down. That's how I assume it. But I don't know if that was intentional or not. But I can always find out. That's an easy question to ask eventually. Great question, by the way. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help as best I can. Oh, the Leo's really awesome. Thanks, man. Yeah, I can't wait to make the other 4. I spent so much time on this base mesh with Leo because the other turtles are, well, they're identical, but they're different, right? So I don't have to reinvent the wheel thanks to ZBrush. So I get to now like form him and make him. I've also made some changes because the turtles are ninjas and they're a bit of a fighter. I always respected the fact that they had elbows and knee pads. I thought that was cool and safety first. But as somebody who's taken martial arts, I've never really once put on elbow or knee pads myself. I'm not a ninja, but I thought it'd be cool to change them up a little bit. And my take was to give them more wraps of that of somebody like a Muay Thai fighter or a boxer. Just because I feel like that was actually, this speaks a little bit more to the character, at least in my interpretation of the character. I've seen a lot of different takes on him, but I decided to just change him a little bit and kind of make him my own. That's the whole point of fan art, right? I'm not a ninja yet. Ian, did you even sleep? Good question. Is that what Control does? I always thought it was the Mahler bugging out. No, exactly. Could you help me with a technique for a sculpt fuzzy fur, like buffalo or headress, without the help of fiber mesh? Ooh, Stealthy, you are asking a very interesting question. Okay. Yes, but it's very sculptural approach. I can give you some insight. It's interesting. I have to ask you though, are you going for realism or are you going for stylization? Because there are 2 different methods for that approach. I think with stylization, you have more freedom to just use basic shapes and draw those basic shapes out and then eventually blend them all in and then start your sculpture approach. For something more of like, you know, fur of an animal of like a realistic sculpture, like something you would see like at a high-end museum or something that's more like, you know, that's more refined, then I would just use clay buildup, damn standard, and take my time getting the proper flow of the fur and work from the bottom up, meaning like I'd start on the belly fur and then I'd work my way to the top because hair overlaps on itself, and then maybe the move brush to pull out a couple instances if I wanted to feel. But fiber mesh would probably be your best approach unless you're talking about 3D printing, and then it's like going back to sculptural roots. That could take a while, but that's a really good question that maybe deserves an actual like tutorial breakdown. But those are my verbal approaches on that, if that's helpful to you. Yeah, I know, right, Anthony? Yeah, articulation, baby. Nice digging the ideas behind that. Yeah, nice. Thank you. Okay, hold on. I want to make sure I want to hit all the questions too. Let's see here. One other question I have is about using the knife tool. I can't seem to slice vertically straight. I can slice every other angle, not just straight down. Is that normal? Fiber mesh in its current state, like fiber mesh is you can use it to 3D print. It's just really thin in the beginning, so you really got to work it. You can use fiber mesh and get some of the actual instances blocked out for 3D printing, but it is a lot of work. because you want to make sure that everything gets welded correctly and is watertight. And when you get a bunch of strings that are wrapped around each other, you're going to have a hard time figuring out holes. So it's not that it's impossible, it's just probably a really more complicated way of going about it, but you can adjust the actual size of your fibers. You can increase those sizes, and either through fiber mesh or through the gizmo inflate or deformation, to then ensure that that stuff actually does weld. My experience with it is that it's just really a long process. It's not impossible, it's just probably not an ideal approach. So I don't recommend beginners starting that way, or even intermediate, but if you're really feeling froggy and you want to try it, you can make it work. It's just going to take some time. So it's not impossible. It's just more of like, is there a better approach? And I would argue that there's a better approach for sure. Okay, so for your knife question, the first thing I want to actually cover real quick, I'm going to go ahead and actually split these into top and bottom. Okay, so if I were to take the knife curve, and let me just make sure I hit save real fast. Okay, if I were to take the knife curve, this is single-sided geometry. I'm going to go ahead and slice this. Okay, it's not going to slice single-sided geometry, because what knife curve is trying to do is the knife brush is trying to slice the topology and then rebuild any holes that happen. But technically, there's already a giant hole and it can't rebuild it. So if you're slicing anything single-sided, it's not going to do that. But look at this. If I cut this way, now it knows that not only did it cut through the geometry, but it actually found something it can weld, because that's its whole idea. If I wanted to close this top hole, then absolutely this is how this would work. So single-sided geometry, you're very limited. No, you can't go down vertical because there's no hole for it to actually weld. Now let's take a look at this on a different scale. If I come here and actually make this thicker, now I'm going to go ahead and cut down. Notice now that it actually sliced and it actually found the areas in which it needed to weld. And this will work in either direction, right? So now it found that this was the hole. Instead of closing the whole thing, it actually closed between these two walls. And this is what knife curve is actually looking for. So if you're slicing down on single-sided geometry with something similar to this shape, it's not going to work for you. But if you do something like this, that you actually have some thickness, and then you start cutting, then absolutely it's going to find those avenues and then it's going to weld it for you. So the other approach is going back to like, what other features would I recommend? Well, for something that's single-sided geometry, this is where slice curve now comes into place, right? Slice curve was designed for this very specific reason. How do I slice up all these different shapes, especially if it's single-sided geometry? And slice curve will do that, utilizing the polygroups to have you go ahead and work that magic. So ultimately, it's about what's the right approach for it. So knife curve, non-single-sided geometry support, and you want to make sure that you actually really do isolate something that has geometry, that has double sides, right? So knife curve is best for that. The other thing too, and while we're on the topic, a big tip is, because knife curve is cutting and then it's trying to weld and close a hole, what you want to make sure is that you don't have overlapping geometry. If you have overlapping geometry, then it might confuse ZBrush to the point where ZBrush just crashes. It just cuts out. And that's because it's confusing what it is you're actually asking it to close. So for example, if I had this double-sided geometry, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the unthinkable, and I'm going to go ahead and have this crushed in, and all of this is now welding. This is a really good setup for a crash, because now if I were to try to cut this, ZBrush may not know exactly what it is I'm trying to cut, because a cut like this all the way across is actually trying to cut and weld in multiple times, and it's trying to do it all on the same level. So something like this is not going to be in your best interest. And so a lot of crashes I get told about are from setups like this. So this is a setup that I recommend you avoid. However, if I were to then Dynamesh this together, so if I were to come here and now Dynamesh this, right? So let's actually up the resolution, hit Dynamesh. Now this is watertight. Now I can freely come through and want to cut that. And that was with a slice curve. So if I come over here to the knife curve and I come through, now the Dynamesh, this was watertight. Those two elements got welded together, meaning that now it can recognize that there's proper topology to try to rebuild. So it's all in your setup. That's why you always hear me say, if you have clean topology, you're going to get really good results with a knife brush because of what it's trying to do and how it's trying to go about doing that. Awesome. Good morning. What's up, Rafi? How you doing? Ooh, good. Got some great. Oh, dude, we are hitting the questions. I love it. I missed you guys so much, by the way. When I travel, streaming is so hard sometimes. So I'm like, man, I gotta cancel this stream. I'm always like, ugh. I never like doing that. What are the benefits of using a morph tool? I use layers and I just can't get my head around morph. Great question. And we have some setups for you. This might just turn into a Q&A stream at this point. All right, great question. I love it. So, okay, the morph brush. The morph targets and the morph brush are very powerful. And I think you're gonna fall in love with them the way I did too. So let's get some cleaner topology here. Say something like this. Perfect. I'm just gonna close all my, undo all my creases. Okay, great. So the morph brush, here's the best example of it. So if we were to come down, and I'm also going to, yeah, let's just do this. So I'm going to come on down here to morph target, and I'm going to store this morph target. So in its simplest form, ZBrush, when you start sculpting, you're basically breaking you're breaking the topology in a sense. That's why we have tools like Sculptris Pro, Dynamesh, Tessellation, Decimation Master. It's all tools designed to rebuild, because anytime you sculpt, right, what happens, like I'm just going to take the move brush, for example. When I pull out this vertice, I'm stretching all of this topology. And this is super beautiful and amazing in its own right. There are tons of artists that really lean into this as their design element, right? However, this gets to the point where it's like destructive. And now you're working in a way that's just like, okay. But let's say just simple form, I want to get back to the original. I want to explore my shapes, but I don't want to commit to destroying my original design. The easiest way is just switch back to the morph. You can restore back to that original topology really simply with just a click of a button. And if I didn't like the other one, then I could turn around and delete that. But let's say I accidentally deleted it and I didn't mean to. Well, I can just Control Z and switch back. So morph is a save state in which you can actually protect your original asset. And there are pipelines that allow you to, like for example, using displacement map, there are pipelines allowed for you to actually retain the UVs and the shape of your mesh that then you can go back on. So for example, if I put Leo through an animation pipeline and said, guys, this is Leo, then I should morph target the very first subdivision, because anything I tack on top is a sculptural change. And if I want to use those sculptural changes for like height maps, displacement maps, or any type of texturing, then I need to preserve my UVs. And anytime I'm stretching out my topology, right, then I'm actually destroying how those UVs are going to be representative. So anything that gets wrapped on that UV now has the ability to be stretched. And this is why in animation you have weight painting, because you want to actually make sure that the topology is protected as best as it can while it's deforming. So in this case right here, the morph target is doing essentially that. It's storing a place in which you can actually save that state. Now notice I actually moved the wrong one. So if I switch, so I needed to Control Z back, but again, it allows me some freedom in this case. We've also, and let's see if I remember how to do it, but we actually just added a new tool where the morph brush also recognizes your history. So let me see if I can come up with a good example real quick on that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and increase my polygroups. I'm gonna subdivide a couple times, and then I'm gonna make a history line right here, right at the top. If you don't know how to do that, you come up here to anywhere in your history timeline, press and hold Control, and you can actually tap a spot. If you want to guarantee that you actually, like if you got a long history and you want to make sure you absolutely touch that last one, the space next to it, the empty space, press and hold Control and tap in that empty space in front of your final history marker, and it marks the very last step. So just a little fun fact. So now I'm going to mark this, okay? And we're going to go ahead and grab the chisel brush for the fun effect of chiseling. I don't know. I said it that way. Welcome to the stream. And now I'm going to come through and I'm going to do a scribe. Okay. And actually this is low resolution, so I'm going to subdivide a little bit more. I'm going to mark that one. I'm going to do a scribe. Now I have this, right? Well, the thing that's really, really cool is that with the, if I go to B for brush, G for morph, and then I grab my morph target here, I can actually paint that back. And it recognizes the history. So it's no longer recognizing the morph original state itself, because the original state was actually, the original state I had was originally based on this subdivision level, so it's based on here, but it really remembered that detail. So if I were to kick back here and say, you know what, actually need to bring that detail back, right? So I'm gonna mark that state instead, and then maybe too, I'm gonna come through back up here at the top. I'm gonna go ahead and make a couple more chisel lines. So I'm gonna come through and say, you know what, I'm gonna sculpt that guy right there, that guy right there, that guy right there. That sounds good. And I come back and my boss says, I wanna get rid of that middle line. I want this first line and I want that line, but I don't want this line. Then what you could do is you can come back, mark that, right? And you can come through, grab your morph brush. Where are we? Morph brush, good job. Boom. I can start painting that back. So I can use history now on top of that. So this is really helping me come through and have a little bit more control and utilizing now the history marker as an unlimited source of morph targeting. I can even come through and be like, you know what, actually split that line in half and make this one into thirds, because my art director is really just like, I want this to feel like scratches and little stuff like that. So I'm going to say, okay. It's also a really good technique to come through and get some really nice crisp lines on anything that you're trying to come in. So you can make things look a little bit more like a gash just by using the actual morph brush and the history on top of it. So gives you a little bit more freedom and a little bit more control. What's up? What's up? Hey, Tina. Got a jet? Got some meetings? Thanks, B, for coming in. Carbon 4444, what's up, buddy? What's up? Witch Cat Crochet, good afternoon. How are you doing? If you like fiber mesh is an easy shortcut, I want to learn to sculpt like Real Pro does. I've seen some people pull off realistic furs, so I want to learn my way to do it. But yeah, I'm gonna go for a realistic look. Okay, great. Okay, cool. So for a realistic look, then I can show you how I approach that. It's going to vary. Results are going to vary. I take a very manual approach. I just use the clay buildup. So I'll take the clay buildup brush, and I really love this alpha squared, because what this will do, let's get a better material for showing this off. So what this will do, if I lay down layers on top of each other, right? Then you can start seeing that this gives me a little bit of flow design. So let's say I wanted to treat this center part as like a part, right? So then I can actually start, first off, layering on the bottom a little bit, coming up to a point, getting some flow to this. This is like probably the worst example of any type of hair. Fur would be smaller strokes that get stacked on top, right? But ultimately, like, I would come in and do something like this. And then what I would do is actually there's a smooth brush you want to play with. If I were to go up here to my light box, go up to brush, go up to smooth, there's this awesome smooth directional. And if I say this, then what I can do is I can smooth these areas in a direction, and it preserves my strokes. So now I'm getting a nice smoother approach to this, and I can come in and start refining these shapes. The other thing too is this is kind of the same answer, unfortunately, for like learning anatomy, but hair's the same way. Hair has anatomy to it, and hair likes to fall on itself and cross over. And so what you want to do is actually come through and kind of learn how to group out different sections of hair and kind of get a feel of what that looks like. And just respect the fact that hair crosses over, folds, loops, knots, and the more you spend time kind of giving an idea of how that structure would look, the easier it's going to be to then kind of fall in and build those areas up. So you can start building up little areas with clay buildup, smooth directional, thicken some areas. Again, this is like the probably worst example, I apologize, but it's just, pardon me, it's just all about like coming in and getting those shapes in there as much as possible. This is how I would approach it. I would just take my time and sculpt that in. Another thing you could do, even though you're going for a realistic look, if you're going for a little bit more of a stylized approach, you could take the move brush, and if you didn't create IMMs or insert multi-mesh brush for like any type of fur clumping, or you're not using any custom brush that you found, then what you could do is you can go here to your curve and turn on your AccuCurve. And then, so that's up here again, brush, curve, AccuCurve. And what this does is it starts bringing things to a point. And so you can actually take those ends that are coming in that kind of intersect and overlap a little bit. And you can start like pulling out little areas to give you the illusion when you back up that there's like actual build volumes and stuff. So that's more of a sculptural approach. And what I would do is I would go and look at like, I would reference a lot of like high-end ones and see what you can find. There's also some really amazing custom brushes out there that will get you closer if you don't want to spend the time trying to do it all by hand. And I'm wearing his hat. Thanks, Pablo. The 3D concept artist. He has a ton of brushes. Pablo Munoz has a ton of custom brushes for that they're like free. And I'm just gonna shout him out because he's an amazing guy. So let's see. Let me find his channel real quick. Pablo Munoz. Here, I just want to get you a link real quick. And there's like a ton of really cool stuff on there. So a quick shout out to, they've also were a sponsor at the ZBrush Summit. But if you come up here to resources and stuff like that, there's a ton of like brushes and stuff that you could find. Resources, no, subscribe, workshops, cheats. I just need to scroll down far enough, I guess. So here, I'll just throw this link in. Let me see. Where are his brushes? Where are his brushes? I want your brushes. Give me your brushes. ZBrush Guides. There we go. Oh, I'm thinking of ZBrushGuides.com. Shout out to him too. ZBrushGuides.com. Shout out to that. That's also what I'm thinking of. ZBrush Guides. Here's another one for you. And also, like I said, the 3D concept artist. Great stuff for that too. So I'm shouting these guys out. Boom. Yeah. Doop, 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 doop. So I combine zero mesh torso. Okay, yeah. Wait. So I combine zero mesh torso to a Dynamesh head, and then Dynameshing them both together. Now I can't zero mesh. It says there's an error. Did I do something wrong? Ooh, interesting. That's an interesting scenario. Let's see if we can repeat that real quick. And let's actually do this. Okay, sorry, weapon creation. Let's do this. So let's recreate this on a base mesh. So yeah, I'm gonna grab this base mesh right here. No, not that one. This one. The male. Yeah, I want the male one. Okay. So I got this main base mesh right here. Okay. And here I'm gonna drop this down to a low resolution. And I'm gonna go ahead and just quickly isolate this neck area right here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and actually do polygroups, auto groups. Okay, so I'm gonna isolate the head, make sure that's a different polygroup, and I'm gonna split these off. Put this up, nope, put that back there. I'm gonna go to split. I'm gonna go to split hidden. Let's see, you've zero meshed the head, and you Dynamesh the body. Did I read that right? Yeah, ZRemesh the torso and Dynamesh the head. Okay, even better. So let's come back here. Let's come in. So you did this. So now here's the aspect. So let's come here and let's actually delete lower. And let's go to Dynamesh. And then let's click the resolution. We'll pick it. We're just picking the resolution slider by clicking and dragging, getting something that's close enough so I can Dynamesh that and I can have this here. Okay, so let's finesse the scenario that we've just produced ourselves. The first one is the fact that we have a ZRemesh shape, and if you had no hole closed, like if this was open like this, then the main problem right now is that what could happen is that you could have overlapping geometry and holes that it can't close. So for example, let's actually shrink this down just a little bit. Let's up this resolution to a ridiculous amount. Let's say resolution of, let's make a change. Okay, super dense, right? And then I'm going to come in, I'm going to drop this in. We'll even scale this down just a little bit more. Okay? And now I'm here. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to duplicate the head. I'm going to duplicate the body. I'm going to move up to version 3 and only focus on these two right now so we have another scenario to cover. And now if I go ahead and merge these down, so I'm going to merge this down. Okay? First thing that you'll notice is that if I had subdivisions at anywhere, shape, or form, it got rid of those subdivisions. It's not going to work. Now, here's the thing. I put a ridiculous situation of 3,840 resolution. Now I'm going to Dynamesh. And what it's trying to do, and it's going to try its best, and it did a really good job here, is that it went ahead and it tried to weld all of this together. There might be some instances where it's so high resolution and the hole is too big that it can't weld. And those are pretty interesting. Now let's come back here. Let's back up just a little bit. And let's actually come here real fast. I'm going to keep groups on this one. But what I want to do is actually close this hole. I'm going to see if I can come through here and actually do... Let's just go here. Modify topology, close holes. Okay. So this actually would weld pretty well because we have a hole, right? But let's do one better. Let's actually come through here. Let's grab this shape, mask it off, and I'm going to try to push this down just a little bit. So I'm giving you a couple scenario scenes real fast just to kind of give you a sense of what could be happening. Sometimes seeing the file's the best, but if I were to come through here now and go to Dynamesh, and let's see, can we do this? See if this works. Does it work? Okay, so it kept those pieces separate. Now I want to see if I can do one other thing real fast. Can mask this off, and I'm going to try to get. I'm trying to get this to actually to fail on me. Let's pay attention to this area right here. Let's redo this. Okay. Yeah, it's not really doing a good job here, but it's trying to weld in as best it can. And you could see too, this could present holes. The reason why I'm pointing out that this could present holes is that this actually might prevent ZRemesher from going through. So if I were to say ZRemesh this at 20%, let's just do a standard ZRemesher. I'm not even going to try to optimize it. This is probably going to fail. And this is probably what you're getting. Let's see if it does. This is not an extreme example. It's pretty close though. Let's take a coffee break and let's see what happens. But you can see ZRemesher is actually struggling because it's trying to take 3.4 million and convert that. And then it's trying to also adopt the holes. I would say even if it goes through, it's probably still going to fail. And fail, I mean like not clean topology. Wow, that actually did a really good job. That actually did a really good job. Okay, that did an amazing job. Let's go back and just look at that. That actually did really well. That's actually really well considering. Let's up that resolution a little bit. Let's go lower. Let's see if we can get... But that could be scenario one. You also might have hidden topology. If you have hidden topology, I think that will prevent ZRemesher from Z-remeshing. It's actually doing really well. Okay, well, let me see something real quick. I'm going to try a thing. I'm going to take this. Okay, hidden some topology. Let's see something. Don't tell me you work. No, tell me you work, actually. So yeah, interesting. I would be interested to see, interesting to see your file, but ultimately, if you have flip normals, collided normals, hidden mesh, if the situation itself is not calling for it erroring out, yeah, trying to create an issue where that would cause, and I just don't know. I'm getting ZRemesher to struggle, but I want it to fail so I can give you a clear example. Maybe it's coming up, but hopefully this is helpful at all. What I would say is just troubleshoot your mesh itself. The other thing that I would recommend is go down to mesh integrity. I'm going to cancel this. Go down to mesh integrity and come here and check mesh and take a look at this. Okay, so there's one mesh that has, there's the mesh that has one edge that are shard or has more than 2 polygons. If the Dynamesh itself is not working 100% well with your actual mesh, then it could be the fact that it's not able, there's some errors. So you could say fix the mesh. This should help and speed up that process really, really well. The other thing you might be able to want to consider is actually remesh by union. And the way you'd want to go about doing this, so I'm going to take this guy, Control-Shift-A, block this out, get this a little bit more appropriately placed back into his body real fast. There, he's wearing a shirt. Okay, great. So you have something like this. You have these two things coming in. And let's actually do one better. Let's go back. Let's go back to this. This is what you originally had said you had your mesh look like. So here what you could do is you can actually center this to the center of your mesh. Clear that out so that you're not working in symmetry. Come in here and you can actually do remesh by union, remesh by ZRemesher, or remesh by Dynamesh. Remesh by union becomes your really good best friend for troubleshooting this stuff. And again, I can come through and accept this. And what this did was it came in and it stitched my Dynamesh and my ZRemeshed mesh together. So it looks really nice. And now I should be able to, again, I always recommend when you got mesh like this where you're kind of going through and trying to merge things, it doesn't hurt to do any type of close holes, weld points, or go to mesh integrity and check it and make sure it's clean before attempting to do ZRemesher. And then the way I do ZRemesher, again, I'll do something like between 2 to 5 or 5 to 10, depending on what the mesh looks like. This isn't that heavy, so a low number works. The higher the number, if you're trying to ZRemesh something like 20 million, don't start at 5. That's not a lot of information. That's only 5,000 active points versus like 20 million. So maybe start something higher at like 30, right? But for something this low, we could start at 5. We can even go down to 3. 5 is fine. And then keep groups down to 0, and then I do adaptive size down to 0. And let's see if this will work here. But going through and making sure you go to modify topology, weld points, close holes and weld points, and then mesh integrity, that should fix 95% of mesh issues because it's usually going to go and solve stuff. You also could have some floating bits. You might have little pieces of mesh. This is a terrible ZRemesher, but it did ZRemesh. Let's go a little bit higher. That's why I was like, let's start with like 25. You might actually, too, have little particles floating. And if you have little particles floating around, then what you could do is you could do an polygroups, autogroups, and then select only the mesh that you have. And then from there, I'll demonstrate that. And then from there, you can delete hidden, and then you could try to ZRemesh again, because it could be failing because there's something in the air of your viewport, which could be causing it to have conflict. So that is another approach you could take. So there, that got that to work fairly well. So let's do the other one real quick, which is what happens if you have little floating bits everywhere. So let's just grab the basic primitive shape, and I'm gonna literally drag out like the smallest thing ever. In fact, I'm gonna put this really tiny, and I'm gonna drag that there, 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 and boom, we can't see what we have here. So how do you know if you have floating bits of mesh that you can't see and you don't know where they are, and you don't know to zoom into this one specific spot that I literally drew out, right? Well, what you could do is you can now go to you can go to polygroups, auto groups, and then go ahead and just start selecting your mesh. And when you select your mesh, if you get this, you have floating bits. Just invert that mesh by holding Control Shift and drag, right? And then just go to geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. And that in itself can help clean up those little bits. That's also sometimes for the 3D printing guys out there who like make sure your mesh is watertight. You're like, yeah, it's watertight. And then you send it to a slicer and it says it needs to be fixed. There could have just been floating bits that ZBrush said was fine because it is technically watertight, even though they might be microscopic. But the slicer picked it up and said, you got something weird going on, and it goes and deletes those for you. That could be it too. So, tangent. Exactly. Never doubt ZBrush. Hey, relax or polish to see if the mesh has problems. Yeah, you could do that too. Absolutely. Great tip. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Hey, it's an Ashley! It's A-Cube, everybody! Hi! Hi, what's going on? I thought that ZBrush was very artistic. It was so beautiful. I make these fun little like bits and things. You're absolutely welcome. I only use the default UI, primarily because my job is teaching ZBrush, so I typically stay in the default. However, on my personal computer, I still use default, but I created a custom pop-up menu, which I actually don't use that much anymore either. I'm pretty much full default now, just because it's faster for me. Hello, what's up, Prashan? Can you tell me a great way to preserve details while decimating a model? Absolutely. You guys have like the best questions. Love it. Okay, let's bring back Leo. He'll take a second because he's like 50-something million, almost 60 million. Boom. We get that full front shot. There it is. There's Leo. And let's come on in and let's do my skin shade 4. Okay. So yes, preserving details. It's super fun. It's super easy. And it's the easiest way to do it. So let's actually, I'm going to slap this on this side for now. Decimation Master. Some of you might know where this is if you've done this before. But check this out. So we have this guy, and this is the solo one. So let's actually, Leo, I want you to hang out over here, buddy. I want you to come over and say hi, and then we're going to solo this out and show you without your shell. And we're going to come down to the bottom, and we're going to go to surface, and we're going to say apply to mesh. And give that a second so we can have some nice details to really preserve. Okay, perfect. So now this is all, this one mesh. It's 19 million. And yeah, if I were to step down, you'll see here all those details, right? They don't stay that way, which is fine. They're there, but they're just on that last subdivision level. Oh, thanks, A-Cube. So, fixed mesh integrity did it. Awesome. You're so welcome. Okay, so to preserve details, there's a couple ways. The first thing to know is what is Decimation Master actually doing, and why is it doing it the way it does? And the thing is that I find that the step-down approach is the best approach to just using Decimation Master, and so not going from like 20 million down to 100,000. I feel like that's a drastic step. And because what I keep saying ZBrush, what Decimation Master is trying to do is trying to look at everything that it feels is important and preserve those. And it's going to start with a silhouette. I don't know if that's the actual coding algorithm, but it's looking at the silhouette, it's looking at the shape, and it's trying to preserve the overall feel of this character, right? So in this case here, if you don't know, a quick breakdown, Decimation Master is under Z plugin. And then of course too, you can keep your UVs, you can freeze your borders, and you can also keep and use your poly paint, which is super fun if you want to render a toy or something that you've done that you've dropped all the way down and you like that beautiful poly paint that you've spent so hard working on. So you can do that as well. For this instance, we're just going to be focusing on details. So I'm going to be picking a material and just focusing not on the color, but rather the actual just details section. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to turn all the color off. Boom. We got noise. Now, what we can do is do a step down approach. So if I first come over here, you have the ability to pre-process. You have to pre-process your mesh, but you don't necessarily have to click this in order to do it. You can, but then you'll be setting up a percentage or how many polys and points you actually want to do. I find this preset to be a lot easier, and it respects the UVs and it respects the keep and use poly paint. So in this case, I want to actually adjust this. This is in thousands. So I would say 20 million, that's a lot. So I at least want about 1 million to step down to. So if I go ahead and hit custom on that million slider and give it a second, and I don't mind letting it think, it's going to go ahead and take a look at it. And you'll see already that it's going to do a really good job pre-processing, getting it in there, and then preserving those details. So let's give it a second. That's why I have coffee. And while we're waiting for this to actually analyze, this is one of those moments where when I do analyzing, I'm like, maybe I could do this on like it's too late. We gotta let it think. So, but yeah, you really just want to take your time with this. While we're waiting for this to bake, feel free to keep asking your questions. And also too, if you guys have you guys all scanned that QR code for the ZBrush for iPad? Because we're going to be giving you guys updates. The official thing is we'll be giving updates on that. So if you guys haven't scanned that QR code on the Summit side, please go do so. In fact, I will even pull up the exact spot in the video in which you can go ahead and do that. While we're waiting for this to bake, I can do that. Because why not? Oh, and a new Blink song came out. There's a new Blink song, guys. There's a new Blink song. Forget everything. Stop working. There's a new Blink song. Okay. I'm so in love with this Blink album. Fun fact, I'm so in love with this Blink album that I am just like, I cannot wait for it to drop in 2 days. I'm so excited. Okay. So here, boom, 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 boom. Day 3. I'm gonna, oh wait, no, actually. Oh yes. We actually have the video for it. Okay, I'm gonna drop the exact time on this, by the way, but I'm also just going to do this because that's thinking. If you guys want to scan it, take a screen grab, sign up for that stuff. All that stuff will be really, really good. Real quick, let me just hit share, starts at, copy this. This will be really good because we're just looking for, you know, we're going to be sending out information, questions, all this good stuff. There's things we're going to be wanting to update you on. So if you're excited about it, if you didn't even know that existed or that it is coming into existence, check that video out and that will be good to go. So a little shout out to that. And look, we're at 24%. So here's the other aspect too. When we're talking about decimation, we're definitely talking about a process in which we want to make sure we're taking our time and preserving those details. So this is worth the wait, in my opinion. Man, I have to buy an iPad, broke. Why do you do this to me? Because you guys have been asking. You've been asking, so we're like, hey, because you're asking, let's do it. Coffee, taking my first sips too. Yes, yes. I'm betting I was the first one. I was so fast, I almost threw my phone. I was so fast on that QR code. Yes. Hey, Ian, what's the difference between using dynamic subdivision thickness versus panel loops? Do they accomplish the same thing? As I threw my pen on the floor, Do they accomplish the same thing? Yes and no. So dynamic subdivision, the reason why dynamic subdivision is a little bit different of approach is because it's taking your geometry and it's faking the third level of subdivision. And the thickness aspect of it is if you're working with single-sided geometry and you would eventually like to apply thickness. And because you're using it under dynamic subdivision, you're actually able to dynamically change your thickness on the fly before you actually hit accept and turn that into real geometry. Dynamic subdivision is a preview. Panel loops is an actual geometry change. So you preset what you want, and then you hit panel loops, and it actually changes your geometry. That isn't a preview. Dynamic subdivision is a preview. So that's the major difference. Can you achieve the same results using both methods? Yes, absolutely. If you have it set up right, yeah, you can absolutely create that thickness and you can adjust it as accordingly, and you can make that work. Panel loops is a very specific approach where you're looping a panel and giving it some actual geometry to work on and give it some thickness, where dynamic subdivision is, again, it's a preview. It's more faking that topology, giving you an idea of what it would look like once you accept those changes. So yeah, that's essentially it. Without repeating myself, that's essentially it. Dynamic subdiv is much greater than panel loops, says Roger, if that's how I interpret that. So is there support for all iPads? So more information will come on that when we're able to update on that. So just like, yeah, so more information will come. I can't actually speak on what the development currently stands. That's why I want you guys to scan the QR code, because we're going to be sending you updates, and I'm sure we're going to be sending questions and thoughts. This is a good chance to kind of give your 2 cents with what it is you as artists and users, how you currently use ZBrush, how you would like to use ZBrush on iPad. This is why this QR code is so important. So please scan that if you haven't, because as we update you, you're going to at least know the direction that we're going. And, you know, if there's any questions that come out again, then you'll be able to answer those questions and provide that feedback. We are at a stage in which we are wanting to get your opinion, obviously. So that's why we're sending you this QR code. So definitely, please scan it. Yeah, dynamic subdivs is actually a really smart way to do it. I actually admit I rarely use panel loops. I don't work in hard surface specifically enough to really utilize the power of panel loops, but there are cases in which I was like, panel loops is a fast, quick way to do it. In fact, actually, the wraps on Leo's arms was done using panel loops because I feel like that was a much easier approach, because it also, the thing that makes panel loops so powerful is if you combine it with the slice curve and you create different slices, it's going to take those polygroups and turn them into its own individual topology. So you don't necessarily have to zero mesh. So it's a different approach to get something. Whereas with attached geometry, as far as I'm aware of, dynamic subdivision will not separate your polygroups. It will just only add onto. Oh, I will show you exactly how I did these straps. This is super fun. We are still in the middle of the decimation master, though. This is what happens when you decimate 20 million. And actually, you know, I know this is a bit a while, so please bear with me on this, but I think this is a really good example of why you would do this. But this is the approach I take. Anytime I decimate down, I take my time in preserving those details. I also just, again, I'm on stream, and I chose to do 20 million. That was a decision that I clearly made. Maybe I shouldn't have. So we'll get the pre-process out the way. It's at 96.8%, 97%, 97.5%. Ooh, we're now kicking. I use ZBrush mainly for polygon modeling with Z modeling. Am I crazy? No, you are not crazy. You are absolutely not crazy. I do everything in ZBrush until the very end. I hard surface in ZBrush, I sculpt in ZBrush. ZBrush is specialty sculpting and hard surface. It's designed to allow you to create freely. So no, you're not crazy. Anything you can do to get the job done in any platform that you're comfortable in, do it. And that's why we're here to make ZBrush as easily and more friendly usable as possible. And that's why I try to take the most straightforward approach to how to do a thing. Even sometimes I take it the long way around. Okay, we're confirming. Okay, boom. All right, we did it. We did it, guys. It happened. It finally approved. Okay, so here's the thing. I haven't made any sculptural changes really that I'm proud of, Leonard, but thank you. Okay, so here's the thing. We're gonna clear this up. So this is 1 million. Boom, look at that mesh, okay? This is 1 million. So I'm gonna stamp this. I'm gonna move this over to the side, just focus on the arm area. And I'm gonna Control Z, and this is 19.064 million. There's absolutely no difference in this whatsoever. This took forever. But now here's the fun part. Because it's already pre-processed, right? I now can step down faster. I now can come here and say, you know what? 250,000. Now this is where you start getting a little low. And now we've lost information, right? Well, at some point, there's not going to be enough resolution to hold the details that you've preserved in there. So going straight down to 250 is still a bit of a jump. But what if we kick down to maybe 600? So we'll go ahead and do this. We'll let it think for a second. It's already pre-processed. So now we're just asking it to drop about a third of what it did. We're going through the pre-process phase. Because it's actually doing a recalculation and it's saying this is now where the current state and we want to preserve this. And so stepping down, we can actually get it pretty low. There will be a point of no return where you're like, this is too low. But I would say if you're trying to step this down for a render or if you're trying to step this down for a print, then anything that's around 1 million and down should be fine. So you don't have to go super, super low. But now we're at 621,000 and this was before and this is after. This is before, this is at 1 million, this is after. Very little change has occurred. And again, let's step down to 250. And now here, this is where we see the biggest change. It's still very minimal, because again, this is 250, let's go, 250 right here. This is 250,000, and let's just zoom in. I'm not trying to, let's go ahead and stamp this. And now let's back up all the way to 20 million. So there's not a huge difference between the two. Very subtle at this point. And this is actually the way I recommend you use Decimation Master, because now we're getting super low. Now let's actually put up a little hot tip. Let's back up to just the 1 million mark real fast. Okay, let's clear this mask. Boom. So I'm gonna mask this section off. Kind of clears my history. Now let's say I do absolutely want to preserve his eye sockets or his mouth. I want to preserve this section. There's so much detail there that I need to preserve this specific section. Well, the cool part is we can actually use masking for this. So what we can do now is we can take our mask pen and we can come through and mask off these areas. Now, I do recommend not going too crazy with this, because the more masks you provide, the more it's going to say, you know what, we're going to pull all of our resources to the mask, and the rest of the shape can just go fly a kite. And you want to be careful of that. So you want to use this sparingly, but if you absolutely need to keep those scars and those other things on his face, right, we can just do this section. You can also gradient the mask a little bit, which gives you a little bit more of a natural fall off. And then if we were to go ahead and say, you know what, let's kick this down to that 621, it's going to take a look at the mask, and now it's going to tell Decimation Master, okay, you know what, I really want you to pay attention to the mask, because this mask is really important to me. Everything else comes next, but the masking is super important. And it's going to take that information and it's going to preserve that information first, and then it's going to disperse everything else out second. So the really way to think of this is like you got that crucial scar or that crucial bit of detail that absolutely has to happen. If you just mask your whole model, it's like you're just decimating, so you don't have to do that. Now, here's the thing. You might not see the difference on this, so now let's go really low. And now what you might start noticing is that there's a little bit more information being preserved here. And we can go even lower to really showcase that the mask is actually forcing a lot of that information to stay within those areas. And so that it's getting pretty tight, but then the rest of it starts falling off and it becomes a little bit softer. So you'll lose information in this area. Again, if I mask this off, and actually, let's do this. Let's go extreme. Let's mask this section off. Let's go really low. And now here's an extreme non-gradient version of that where you can actually see it's really like protecting that mask point. So, and it's really just preserving that. So all the details and around his lips and his eyes were saved, but everything else took a hit. So that's another way in which you can start preserving details. So use that sparingly, but again, at some point, there's only so low you can go before the details can't. And this is at least the silhouette at 20,000. So we went from 20 million to 20,000 with a few techniques. So it just depends on how low you want to go. Just be careful with that. Yeah, absolutely. Hold on. Yeah, respect your madness. I love it. You're absolutely welcome. Yep. Hello, and thanks for the great stream. I'm having trouble moving the geometry in ZBrush's symmetry sculpting mode. All right, do you mean the local symmetry, or just symmetry, or the new dynamic symmetry? Okay, so there's 3 options. Specifically, when I try to move the geometry that is close to each other in the center, they resist and work against each other. For instance, if I'm trying to move... No, just symmetry. Okay. For instance, if I try to move a chest closer to each other in the middle with a big move brush, it just doesn't work. Any solutions for that? Trying to make sure I understand your question correctly. So let's actually work on this low model version real fast. Okay. And let me just real quick... Okay, so this is non-symmetrical, right? And local sim is turned off. But if I have symmetry turned on, but my gizmo is truly in the center, then you're going to get this. Because it's trying to pivot from that point. So moving your mesh around could be funky. This guy's dancing. Sorry. There you go. There's my Cyclops. Anyway, so you'll get this. AQ, what do you think about this beautiful piece of work? It's amazing, isn't it? I'm going to leave that up just for you. Drive some interest. Anyway, so the first thing could be just the fact that if you need to move it off center, trying to make sure if I'm understanding your question correctly. But the thing I'm thinking, this is what I'm guessing. What I'm guessing is you moved it slightly off center at one point, and maybe, just maybe, on accident or whatnot. I'm trying to see if I can create this. There might be a scenario in which you might have at one point mirror and weld, and you're slightly off. You're just slightly off. And actually, let's do this. So by doing this, I'm not going to be truly center. And that's also going to cause, that might cause some conflict. Turn off local sim for a second. Yeah, that might cause some conflict. Let me reread the question. Trying to move the closed chest in the middle just doesn't work. Any solutions? And then when you're using the move brush, for example, closing the gap in the middle of the chest. Okay. Thanks for clarifying. Let's back this up. Mr. Leo, get your butt back there. Okay. So you know what? Let's give me some resolution back just to play with this and get a cleaner cut. Okay. So you have something like delete hidden and then mirror and weld. Okay. And you're trying to use the move brush and you're trying to close this gap. And this isn't working for you? Okay. So there's a couple approaches. Is this what you're talking about? Like this is the scenario? Yes. Okay, great. Okay. So there's a couple things with this. First thing is understanding how the brush itself works. So the brush itself, based on its size, the bigger the brush, the more you're going to get some fight because it doesn't want to connect because you're kind of pulling in on itself. So a way to combat that without forcing a smaller brush on you, let's actually go under brush, and then let's come over here to, I believe it's auto masking and topological. Now topological, what this will do is it's actually going to really be referencing your polygroups. But this range is actually something that you can utilize this to your advantage. So you can actually drop the range, say something like 2. And what this will do is it'll allow it to move in a little bit closer. And oh, I have AccuCurve turned on. Don't do that. Okay, so the range itself will help you a little bit, but you're still going to get that fight. Let's see if I kick down the range to 0. Nope. If I kick up the range, say 30. Come on, grab it. Yeah. Okay. So this is like I said, because you're actually it's actually like pulling on itself, and there's only so much you can do. So there's solutions to this, and I wouldn't recommend trying to pull that in on itself. Instead, this is what I would actually recommend doing. So if you needed to close a hole, it's best to preserve symmetry for as long as possible. And in something like this, obviously what you don't want to do is you don't want to come in here and mask off one side and then kind of pull it, right? However, what you might be able to do is you could come through here. We could do auto groups. Let's just keep this guy. And we're going to go ahead and, this is an extreme example, but this might help you out here. We're going to be working on one side. So if you only had a hole on one side, you still can come through here. Let's turn off symmetry. You still can come in. This is essentially what I'll end up doing. I'm going to be moving one side on over to this because with Modify Topology Mirror and Weld, what's cool about Mirror and Weld is that it's looking at screen left. And then it's trying to make sure that there's nothing on that side first before it looks at screen right. So screen left is going to turn around and say that this actually is the most important thing and never ignore this. And if there is nothing there, then you can ignore and go to screen right. So with screen left, we can work on this side. So to close really any hole, and like I said, something on it as an extreme case as this, it could be as simple as getting rid of half that topology, masking off a section, and pulling this over a bit. And then if I mirror and weld this, it's now going to respect that section, and it's going to come through, and now you can actually go back to symmetry, and you can get that information back to you as much as possible. If it's a tiny hole, though, just try close holes. Close holes might be able to work as well. But for something like this, I've had to reset full symmetry before in the past, where I had really bad holes going up the center, and then I'd have to kind of clean that up. So if I understand the question correctly, this is an approach I would take. Shift S, yes. And then yes, Control N to clear. Sweet, awesome. Anytime I hear your explanation solve my problem is such a really cool feeling. Thank you, I'm glad. Yes, awesome. Glad to help. I've had that scenario before, and man, that could be a pain. Yeah, and I'll do this sometimes too. Let's go to now I'm on a tangent. Let's do this. Let's go to a lower one. So check this out too. This happens to low versions. So if we were to do this, if we were to go to initialize, and let's just go Q cube, boom, the most beautiful Q cube of the whole wide world, right? And here's the thing, and it's like, okay, I want to get a center line on this. Here's another problem. I'm in symmetry. I've hit X, and now I want to come in, and I want to add some edge loops, right? I could do this. I can add this edge loop, but there might be issues with maybe any type of other sculptural approach, right? Because there's no center line. And so let's say I had a shape that was looking a little bit more like this. So I'm just going to quickly grab this guy, and I'm going to put this over. And this is the simplest way of explaining it. If I have this edge loop here, right, and then I hit Modify Topology and Mirror and Weld, essentially what happens is it creates a center edge loop, and then it'll create the other loop on the other side. Basically, all I did was I basically took this section, and then from here, I moved it past its center. So I ended up moving it past its center, and then when I hit mirror and weld, it corrected that, and that made it truly center, and it welds it. The mirror and welds will mirror and then weld to that main shape. So that's the main approach. When I do any type of like mouth bags on characters that need like animation, but then I close the mouth, that topological approach, I use that a lot to open and close the mouth with a brush to make sure it's really good. So in a sense, like I said, this is essentially what I did. So if that helps as well, just so you kind of have a good understanding of how that works. I sculpted one side of a sword. What's the best way to mirror it on the other side? Ooh, that's a fun one. Easiest ways, if it's true, is it truly symmetrical or is it off here? If it's off here in space, if it's off in space, something like this, and you modeled one side, try to bring it back. Depending on what side you did, you can mirror and weld at any point in time on any axis. So let's say you modeled it where like it's front facing, but you have the blade long ways, like you have the blade like this, right? And you want to mirror, and you did all the details on the front. Then the easiest way to do is come here to mirror and weld, hit the Z instead of the X. So any changes that I made on this side, say something like this. Here's all my changes, right? So I could just mirror that on the Z as well. What happened? Oh, it's masked. No, whoops. I hit Dynamesh. I hit Dynamesh. It's off in space. You living dangerously. I love that. Are you in 2023 or are you in 2022? That's going to vary my answer. But again, you can mirror based on the Z or on the Y or on the X, and that will get you back. And see, look, got a nice sharp point. But it's like we made a sword on it. There we go. We made a sword. 2023. Okay, cool. So the cool part is if your sword is truly symmetrical. That's not. You're trying to make it symmetrical. Okay, hold on one second. Sorry. Okay, let's back this up to something like this. And I'm going to move this over here. Let's put this back in the center because the reason why I asked you is because you have dynamic symmetry. And because you have dynamic symmetry, if I move this off over here and I move this up and I rotate this around and I rotate this way and my gizmo is in the center because it's beautiful and that's the way it is. If I hit that mirror and weld again, right, it's going to be here normally. If I turn on local dynamic symmetry, look at that. It will function on this side. So let me see something. Does this work? Sure. No. Come on. Work for me. You're not working for me. Okay, that actually did not do what I expected it to do. I would say try to get it back center. That's going to be your easiest approach. What you could do, if you're like this, so I guess the 2023 one doesn't matter. Never mind, I'm changing my answer. Well, we could mirror. Actually, if we mirrored that, and then we did this. Let me see. I'm now troubleshooting. Give me 1 second. No, that doesn't work the way I want it to work. Oh, I'm off center. I'm off center. Does that matter? Let me see. Let me see. Let me get true center. Let me get back to true center here. Hold on. So I'm going to take the Z modeler. I'm going to go to face, and then I'm going to go set symmetry, and I want to set it between these 2 points, and I want to set that in the middle. Okay. And then I want to... Okay, no, that doesn't work. Okay. Wow, that did not do what I expected it to do. So my answer changes. If you can get it back to symmetry... If you can get it back to world center, I'd recommend doing that. You'll have a lot more options. I thought dynamic symmetry was going to work, but it did not do what I wanted it to do. So let's actually back up in time a second. Give me 1 second as I come through and I think about this. If it's off center like this, and not turned around like I showed you, then you could do mirror and weld based on local sim, which works in 2022 as well. So just local sim is going to let me do that. So if I turn this off center, something like that, and then do mirror and weld, that doesn't matter. Yeah, just keep it center. It's going to mirror and weld based on the object itself. This could be a thing, and then you could just modify that shape, and then you could send that back home. That gives you true symmetry. In this case here, yeah, that might be a way to go about doing it. Or I would say send this on home, get this close enough to something that you can call and be happy with center. Say something that's like slightly overlapping, then you can mirror and weld this on the X, and you could send this on home and keep that center. I'd also recommend too, just in general, Stager is my best friend. Anytime I'm going to move something off center, I'd recommend doing Stager moving forward, especially since you can scale things up and then you can switch back to original size or scaled size. So I would say that's something to keep in mind. Most weapons are pretty symmetrical, so I'd always try to stay symmetrical, but I don't know if any of that helped. Those are kind of some of my thoughts. If I come up with another idea, then I'll kick it back. Yeah, it's the gizmo orientation. And when you're off center, it gets hard to go back to that. Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, oh, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, rotate the axis, get that gizmo going. And here's the other thing, too. You can face your gizmo the way you need it to be. Here's a little fun tip for you. If you want to face your gizmo in another direction, like if I click the Alt here and I start, I can actually point to a space. So I can point this up. I can get this straight up. And then I can set that back in. And the way I did that, let's see. Let's move this way. Boom. So if I'm here and I'm pointing this here, I could point this at a direction, and my gizmo will move. There's not a lot of vertices here, so this is always a fun one. But that set symmetry is actually a pretty good way of going about it. Okay, yeah, give it a shot. Hopefully it helps out even just a little bit. And thank you, chat, for coming in with some other suggestions as well. Oh, the model you're making is the real 1985 Mitsubishi Fighter fire engine? Dude, that sounds dope. That sounds awesome. Okay, leather strap time. We got time. Let's do the leather strap time. Great questions, by the way. Hopefully that last one at least helps you out just a little bit. Okay, let's move on in. There's nothing I did here for fun. That's going to be fully, like, none of that is going to be kept. So I'm just going to reload my tool. So I'm actually going to come through here, just delete everything. I don't need any of that. And then let's load the tool. Let's pull up my pose and let's go over strap making. They always do. I love it. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so these straps. I'm going to tell you guys right now, these straps, there's a few techniques and then a labor of love. That's how I approach them. I feel like anything that needs to look relatively realistic turns into a labor of love, but I can show you the best approach and how I started it. And then based on any stylization to realism, you can modify this workflow in any way, shape, or form to get those things in there as quickly as possible. So let's go ahead and, again, we're going to dock him. Leo has just been hanging out with us this whole time, and I think he's just loving it. Okay, so we have this right here. Now notice that my base mesh is actually broken up into groups. This is actually really, really helpful at any point in time when you want to do a technique like this, because we're going to be utilizing panel loops and we're going to be utilizing slice curve. So let's say I would like to make just the arm bandages for now, right? So first thing is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate my mesh, right? Because I have everything broken up into polygroups. I would duplicate my mesh. So Control-Shift-D, drop it down to the lowest subdivision level. Okay, come through, delete higher. I only work on one side, by the way, so I'll delete everything that I don't need, because I could just mirror and weld it later, and then I'll delete hidden, and now I'm left with this. And this is a good start to this. And then what I'm going to do now is just we're going to create some variety in our wrap shape. So we're going to grab the slice curve, and we're going to start slicing. Now, before I start slicing, the other way is if you don't have subdivisions and you want to make wraps and stuff like that, all you really need to do is use the mask extraction method. Mask off this area that you want and do an extraction. I highly recommend that you do this with 0 thickness, because if I do and I say accept, now I have single-sided geometry that will be the geometry that is represented under the surface. So this pulled geometry straight from this, and it just pulled in an extraction, but it's single-sided. Much easier to deal with, believe you me. So if you're going to do a mask extract, do it with single-sided geometry. It's way easier. So, but we still have this initial shape, okay? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some cuts. Now, my approach to this first starts off simple. I'm going to make my first initial cut. So let's say I make my cut here. And then I'm going to do a slight angle adjustment. I'm going to kind of cut down this way, and then I'm going to come through, and then I'm going to cut this way. So I'm thick on one side and then thick on the other. And I'm just literally going to repeat this. And just carefully choose kind of how I want the wraps to look. And then anything I don't need, I just delete this. So I really don't need this, so I'm going to go ahead and say delete. Now, the cool part about this already is the fact that we have a good base to start from. Now, we can get really interesting. The first approach is keeping it simple. We can now come up here to edge loop, panel loops, which is right up here, and we can adjust how many loops that we want. I want to do, let's say, 2 loops, and the thickness we can do as needed. But now if I do 2 loops with double-sided geometry, hit panel loops, it now separates these straps into individuals. So if I were to actually come through and say, you know what, I want to do my poly groups and I want to do group by auto groups, it's now made them all individually separate straps. And this is already like a great starting spot, right? So this is something we can do. You can get a little bit more interesting if you would like, come through and actually do some initial cuts, kind of make this feel a little bit more like it's wrapping. So like this comes in this way. So maybe now I come in and I do something like this. And this will start now. I'm now slicing in these elements to give me a little bit of variety to show that they're like kind of tucked in a little bit. And so here, I actually would want to take this one on this side, and maybe I actually don't cut through that way. Maybe I tuck that in this way. And I'll just start this approach this way. Maybe we'll cut in this way. No, not there. Let's maybe cut in like this, giving this a little bit of overlap. And then I can have something like that. So if I go back to my panel loops now, my panel loops, I can start getting some interesting shapes. Now, I have something funky happening here, and that's because I have surface turned on. So let's delete that so you can focus just on this. The problem with this, though, is that you're going to start getting some funky creases and stuff like that. But that's okay, as long as you're aware that you're going to start getting some interesting creases. But this is a good starting spot for what we're trying to achieve, right? But for his straps specifically, what I actually did was I started with this, and then I delete that surface, and I made my panel loops. So I'm going to come back in, going to go up here to geometry, panel loops. I did 2, and I gave myself a little bit more thickness. I think I did like 0.02. There we go, something like that. Then I did my auto groups. Boom, and I got this. Now, let me quickly come over here, select these guys, and just hide them. And now I have this. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and just do a little bit of a scale inflate. So I'm going to press and hold Control. And I'm going to inflate these a little bit more. And then I'm going to take the Move Topological brush now. So B, M, and then T. I'm sorry, B, M, and then J. because I think I have another brush here. I have a couple brushes loaded. And then from here now, what I can start doing, if we just solo this out, I'm going to start pulling these out a little bit. And this is where I start tucking in some of this stuff. So I'll come in, maybe tuck this one in, maybe pull this one up a little bit, giving me some variety and variation to how the look of this is going to go. This is where that labor of love comes in. But I'm approaching it very similar, where I'm going to come in and actually give me a decent base to start from. And this is where that move topological really helps out, because it's utilizing that topological thing we discussed earlier. If I hit D for dynamic, kind of start to show me what that looks like. And then I'm not afraid to come in here too and do a control duplicate. So I'll control duplicate. I'll turn this around maybe, and I'll reposition this. I'll give this a new poly group. Maybe start coming in and giving me a little bit of an approach. This is really all I ended up doing with this one, because I didn't want to spend the time to try to get it to actually wrap around the hand. If I were to do a wrap around hand one, that would be a little bit more time consuming, and I'd probably just use these spheres for that. But I'm going for the good from far but far from good approach. And now I'm going to give me a different color. So I'm going to make sure I fill that with that nice blue. And then I start just really fine tuning this. I spent probably like a good 40 minutes on this to do this approach. And if we take a look at my straps here, so let's hide these for a second. And let's just take a look at this in its nature. What you'll see is that each one of these is a single wrap that I literally just started tucking in, and I started creating these different motions. So I just was going for the feel of what this wrap job looks like, because this is going to be printed eventually. Yep, exactly. Yeah, you don't have to worry about the topology of that. Once you do the panel loops, as long as there's enough information there it supports, it does a great job. Yes, absolutely. Again, so then the labor of love is that each one of these can be modified exactly how I need it to be, and then I just start tucking them in and getting that feel. You could do the creased, you could do the one where you start cutting them in and start getting those angles of shape. Depends. I would do more of that where I was like actually cutting in and slicing. Like we're to back this all up, because this also depends too of like how far you want to take this, which is always up to you. But when I started like isolating this and then doing this type of cut, this is something that I've done when I was doing more of a stylized character, you know, because then I would come in and do something like this. I'd press Alt and kind of curve that a little bit. I would do this approach for like a super stylized character. I would also come down and maybe make some cuts like this, and then some cuts like that. And again, so just depending on how far you want to take this. But what's cool about wraps is that once you start really like going through and playing with them, and you just kind of reference what real wraps look like and how they tuck into each other, you can start getting some really cool shapes quickly. So yeah, and that's how I got these beautiful things right down here. In fact, which one was this one? Which ones have I turned off now? So that, oh yeah. Yep. And sometimes, being honest with you, sometimes I'm like, yeah, that one doesn't look as good as I wanted it to. So I really just took my time. These straps, these wraps down here are almost identical to these. I copied and pasted quite a few of these, got a flow that I wanted, and then I made it fit the leg a little bit better so that we had a little bit more of a natural feel to it. And then same thing with the hands. If we take a look at the hand straps I think are a little bit uglier, but they work. But again, I just have all of these to be single little pieces, some tucked in pieces. And then what's cool about like that, you know, the move topological is that you get to just really just grab one and move it around and see how that fits, how that works. You could tuck it in and you can make these work out really, really well. And then as far as the actual like It's like as far as the actual, let's pull this one in a little bit. There we go. It's supposed to be more like that. Okay, perfect. If I were to do, okay, yeah, let's get that one in there like that. Okay, so, and as far as the detail goes, if you guys are curious on the detailing of this one was really simple. All I literally did was I went up to noise, went up to the light box, and I pulled noise 07. I double clicked it, it gave me this. I came on down, color blend to 0. I zoomed all the way in. I don't even have UVs at this point. And all I did was I adjusted the scale to get me something that looks a little bit smaller. Could adjust the noise scale. Get something that looks a little bit cool, and then the strength as well. Say okay, and that gave me that detail. And then once I do apply to mesh, it'll bake really nicely. If I wanted to, I'll do UVs on that. Absolutely. Hey, dude, can you make the public Naughty Dog and Blizzard Summit talks not fair? I can't watch them. So, as transparent as I can possibly be, there was conversations about which presentations were allowed to stay up and which ones were not allowed to stay up. There are a few unfortunate that could not stay up due to the conversations between the companies. That's all I'll really say on that. So, yep. I don't make deformation in surface. Wait, it doesn't make deformation in surface without UVs. No, you don't need to have UVs. I just don't have UVs. But it does. It does surface stuff. All you need to do now is just apply that to the mesh. And then you'll see all that noise is there. It's just, it's only 1.8 million. It's not a lot to capture that fine detail. So if I subdivide that to 7 and say make mesh, now it's there. So if I were to bake that, I'd have to bake that at a higher resolution mesh. Yes, noise works without UVs, absolutely. And like we showcased at the summit, we're bringing Maxon noises from Cinema 4D on over into ZBrush as well, because Cinema 4D is actually known for its for its noise system. And even in Cinema 4D, to use the noise system, you absolutely do not need to have UVs. In fact, I talked to a lot of Cinema 4D artists who don't even use UVs much at all, which is really cool. And it's the same thing here in ZBrush. The noise system here, you have two options. When you open this up, you have your 3D. Here, let's come here. Let's do the magnifying glass. You have your 3D, which is your basic shape, everything that's going on with it. And then you have the ability to use UVs if you have them. So if I were to cancel this out, come here and just hit Shift M on this, and let's just solo this mode out for a second. If I were to drop this to a low resolution, come on up here and let's just do fun, because I'll show you the difference between the two. And it depends on the look you're going for. So here I'm gonna go UV master, low. I'm gonna go ahead and just unwrap this. Should be pretty quick because my mesh isn't terrible, but it might not be the prettiest either. Okay, let's see if we can unwrap it real quick. What's up, Chase? We still got a few minutes. Can't wait for the C4D noise in ZBrush. When will it be released? Release date information will come soon. Unfortunately, I can't give you a full date, but it will be coming soon. You won't have to wait a year for it. I think I can safely say that. It should, yeah. So that's all I can say. Soon. And is this the moment where Ian broke ZBrush? Absolutely, Jones. I pride myself on trying to be as transparent as possible when I can. Let me cancel. I made a terrible mistake. I don't know what happened. Okay. See? I'm just like you guys. I'm an artist who makes things break. It's fun. Let's see. Hey, just curious, what is the purpose of the slice curve brush? Great question. So the purpose of the slice curve brush is to slice up your mesh and separate it into separate polygroups, in which then you can utilize the polygroups to do things like what I just did with panel loops, or to just have more control through ZRemesher, because with the option of polygroups, you can actually control the way your edge loop is remeshed through the ZRemesher process. In fact, polygroups is probably the most powerful underlining feature in all of ZBrush, which makes it as strong as it is, because you can quickly isolate and do things like these ridiculous wraps that I put on there that I'm now trying to UV for a purpose. I did not think that I was going to break this. So the purpose of slice groups is to purposely slice up that mesh, which supports single and double-sided geometry. No. Thank you for repeating. I was actually scrolling up and I saw that question. So great stuff. Hi. Any info on ZBrush for iPad since the summit? Sorry, I didn't keep up to date with the news. Do not worry. There's been no further updates as of right now. What we are doing is asking people to scan a QR code and which I actually could share this right here. Boop, which will take you exactly to the QR code you need to scan, which will keep you up to date with all the latest and greatest stuff. I think I broke ZBrush. So here's the thing. I'm just going to end this task real fast. I didn't do anything worth saving, so you guys could take a look at my Elf on the Shelf that Ellie Wade and I collabed on, which is super fun. Let's restart ZBrush. Boom, boom, come on, baby, load it, load it. Yep, okay, that's cool. Good job, Ian. You crashed the system. You're awesome. Okay, let's do this. So let's really quickly go back here. Let's reload my Leo real fast, and let's get a. Let's try this one more time. All right, let's drag him out. What's up, Leo? He's been with us this whole time, secretly judging me, really just wanting to make sure that the world was the way it is. Okay, let's try this again in an instant replay. So I'm going to delete this noise. I'm going to drop this to something that's super low res. And just for the sake of sakes, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and delete higher on this one. And let's just try this again. UV unwrap. It's not symmetrical. And let's actually make ourselves easier. Polygroups. Let's group by normals. Let's give us a little bit more of a cutting edge. Just want a fast unwrap. It's possible. These are ugly. This is ugly mesh. So if this fails, then it's probably because my geometry sucks. Lurking and working. Kate Wynn, how's it going? Stolo, I'm right there with you. Every day I walk into the office and say, when can I break it? When do I get it? When do I get it to break it? When do I get it so I can break it for you so then we know it's good? No, okay, there we go. So now I have some UVs. Yes. Yes, UVs. How do you know? Because you could do this. Boom. Look at that. Look at how beautiful that is. Okay, great. So now I have my UVs, and now I can subdivide again. Yes, everything's great. So now let's do this. Let's recreate. And gosh, this. There we go. Let's brighten this up. Okay. So now, here's the difference. Okay, so if I go back to my surface noise, I go to my light box, I recreate noise 7, it defaults to that 3D shape. So you see all this nice tearing that's happening? Yeah, this tearing is beautiful, and we just absolutely never want that. Well, the beauty part is that you can use this noise without the UVs, and you can scale this down, and you can get something that looks, you know what, close enough to what you would want that to be. However, that might not be the best option. That's why UVs do exist. And when UVs exist, we zoom in here. And let's actually blow this back up. So you can see here now it's respecting that UV shape. If I switch between the two, you can see this is the one difference. Switch back, this is the other difference, right? And so it's just a nice way, like it will work best with UVs, but no, you don't need UVs for it. So then you can get nice, clean. This would be something that you can be happier about and you can take home to mom. And you can say, look, I did it. So that would be the main difference, in which anytime I'm ready to push things to final details, if I decide quickly if I'm absolutely going to be using UVs, then I will do so. However, just on a fun fact to wrap up the day before we go through anything else, let's actually cover one more thing about noise, because we're on the topic of noise. I'm going to divide up, say, yep, and actually let's do this. I just want cleaner mesh. That's all I want. So I'm just gonna give myself some cleaner mesh, something to play with. Right, come over here, just tap that one time. Great, wonderful. Now I'm gonna go ahead and actually gonna go ZRemesher, detect edges, ZRemesh that, half that. Okay, great, perfect. So now I got something like this, right? Subdivide a few times if I want to, boom. Okay, so if you guys are not sure, and where is it? My noise patterns. If you guys familiar with these brushes here and how this works, so this right here works off of the noise system as well, and it works without UVs. But where that noise system is actually driven is here under brush. And I got surface noise. And right here, this surface noise now, if I were to open this up, frame this, you can see that this is the driving force. But you see how it's like pulling all that information in? That's because that's surface level, because we're focused on this 3D. It's taking the main shape of this alpha and it's driving through the object. So the brush system, you can actually open up brush and take that surface noise capability. And now what you can do is you can come in and you can start. This is probably the worst color ever. Let's actually do this. Let's go ambient occlusion AO preview. There we go. So now I can actually come through and paint on a surface. And I'm using that noise information. And these are default brushes. So if you're not super familiar with how to make one from scratch, all you need to do is whatever brush you have, whatever alpha you're driving, right? This has this alpha on here. Whatever alpha you're driving, you can now come into the brush system, turn on surface, create a texture that you would want. So the way I would actually kind of do it, if I were to start from scratch, let's back this up. If I were to modify, let's actually take I'm going to take the clay buildup one, right? Then what you could do, this is something I've done, which is super fun. Let's actually take this guy right here. I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, this guy, I really like this noise information right here. So I'm going to edit this to something that I like. Say something like this. I'll say, okay, this has an alpha to it. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to close that down. I'm now going to go into the brush surface, come in here. I'm going to paste this. And I don't want the color. Okay, now I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to delete this one. Now this is super low res. So let's increase this a bit. And look at that. I'm now painting with that surface noise, because now it's driven on my brush location. So, and then I can modify this brush. So if I want to go back up to brush, say, you know what, I want to really just like come up here to my depth, and I want to make sure that my depth is good. Or if I want to, if I need to actually maybe, have it on the surface, but I want to like modify how much that fall off is, then I can come in and start doing that. And of course, the cleaner the surface is, the easier it is to do it all. So you can see here, it's actually starting a little bit of a fall off, but it is overlapping. So you'll want to make sure you can just modify that brush. Or like I said, just come in here and modify one of these pattern brushes, because we spent the time to really get it nice to come on up and get that surface. That's all it's driving. So you can do that without UVs as well. You're welcome for the link, absolutely. Is there easiest way to reset your poly paint from your subtool simultaneously? If you want to start all over, do you have to go through each subtool individually? Absolutely not. No, you do not have to do that. I'll answer that in 1 second. How many polys do you need for nice like that? Because of the way the vertex is, it's going to depend on your mesh, but something like this is 2 million. If you take a look at my Leo, if we go back to Leo, Leo, how are you doing? Come on back up to tool, come on back up to Leo. I'm just going to spotlight the fact that my total subtool right now is 53 million. All my subtools are 50, like the total points is 53 million. And I can tell you right now, the actual body with all the nice detail is almost 20 million. So the higher res and more detailed the sculpt is, like I think my highest personal project has gone up as high as 75 million, but I've seen artists go up to 250 million. So, and that's where ZBrush strength really lies. That's what separates ZBrush from everyone else, is the fact that we handle that 250 million with ease on systems that normally would just break under any other circumstance. This is like one of the main powers of ZBrush. Okay, so resetting all the color of the subtools, and then we're going to call it a day. We're going to wrap it up, guys. This has been an awesome Q&A session, so I'm super excited. I will be streaming next week, and then I'm at Lightbox. So if you're at Lightbox the 27th through the 29th of October, come by the Maxon booth, say hi, because we're going to have a lot of fun stuff happening there too. Now, okay, resetting the color of Polypaint. It's really, really simple to do that. You could do one of two things. First things first is all you really need to do is just shut down all your color and work with this. And the moment you refill a color, right, it's going to put that little stamp on there. But if you come up here to color in 2023, if you come up here to color and do it, then you're doing it to every single individual one, right? However, what you can do is instead of going down this rabbit hole, all you really need to do is come down here to Polypaint and use this fill color, because everything in the tool menu has an apply last action button to it. So if I were to say fill this color with white, and then I can come back up to subtool, and then I can apply last action to all subtools, and because it's doing all the paint, I'm gonna say yes, and it's gonna go and fill in all of that. So now all of my paint is reset to a base color. Okay, the other thing that you can do, I just Control Z. The other thing you can do is kind of the old school method, which is grab a base color that you want to be proud of, come on down here to Z plugin, and we're going to go to Subtool Master, and we're going to go to fill, and we're going to go to color. We're just going to say all, and it's going to fill all of my subtools back to the original color system itself. Now, if you're setting all of this back because you're actually trying to just kind of hide the color temporarily, you know, and you don't want to showcase all that. So if I if I reload this, I'm gonna reload this guy right here. Let's go ahead and reload Leo. There's a cool technique that I use too. If you just want to temporarily hide the color, if you actually come on up here to render, fade opacity, will actually fade that to a very specific color. So I can actually fade this to have some red, right? And then what I can do is I can come through and adjust this to have a specific look I want. The only downside to that is that it's hiding a lot of information. Like it's kind of hiding my mask. I just masked this area, and if I fade this out, you'll see it's not showing my mask, but it will show it. It's dedicated to white here. But this is another way if you just want to show off the base color of it real quickly without actually showing all the color, and you don't want to come over here and tap it all off and on, then that's how you do it. But to reset all of it, hold shift, tap that little brush. That literally kills all the poly paint. And then if you go and overwrite that, then you're good to go. So now I can come here and I can start picking a normal color. That's it. It's just this brush icon. It's either on or it's off. Hold shift, turns them all on. Hold shift, turns them all off. So we can use this brush surface noise to cover the seams of the other surface noise. I wish I knew that before. Now you do, Roger. Now you do. What's up, Frank? I've been working on my cloth skills, and this is very helpful. Awesome. Very cool. All right, guys. That is it for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. This was a fun Q&A session. I really, really love it. So thank you for welcoming me back with such fun questions. I really dig it. So thank you guys. This has been super awesome. Like I said, I'm going to be streaming next week. So I'll be streaming next week, Wednesday, same time. And then after that, I'm at Lightbox. And then that's going to be really good. And so I'm really excited about that. There is a little bit of, I will be doing some travel for some studio training in November. So there might be a couple days where I'm not streaming, but I always try to keep you guys posted on that, on that stuff. If you want to follow me, I usually put that stuff on like social medias and stuff. But if you guys want to follow me, you could just follow. That's usually my @ on like Instagram or Twitter or anywhere else where I try to update stuff. So if you want to follow me there, absolutely. And yeah, more than happy to hang out with you guys. So thank you very much. And that's about it. So I guess we're going to call it. So we're going to make this awkward. All right, everybody. Chat with you later. Bye, 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 bye.